I want you to, first of all, you're going to have a lot to cover. We're going to be going over contracts, we're going to be going over scheduling, and we're going to be going over submittals. Those are our favorite things to do, right? Not typically, but they're so important for us. And if we don't manage them properly, all the work that we put in bidding the project can be for name. Because now you're buying that project instead of making profit on that project. That project is now something that's a pain in your ass instead of something that's paying for your. We're going to give you an opportunity to get familiar with that general structure of a contract. In this case, Hoffman's contract. That's what we all care about. We don't care about anyone else's contract. We care about Hoffman's contract. So we want to look at how their contract compares to what you've seen before. If there's anything unique, if there's some advantages of working with Hoffman, which we all know there is. And so it's really important to know the contract, as well as when you get paid. Is that important to folks? And understanding how they convert your bid into a contract. And so that's really important. Going over the process for the subcontract execution. Then we're going to go over with Hoffman's own. This guy's a superstar. Not only can he kick ass, pardon my language, I'm not used to having little ones here, so we're going to have to figure this out. But we have someone who not only can do damn near everything we have going on in a project, he also is one of the best schedulers. And he understands the critical path process. He understands the sequencing of a project. He understands if you sequence a trade before it's supposed to be in its natural, traditional sequence, how that impact can compound and really create challenges for other trades. And so having Ryan here is critically important. And he makes a lot of money for the company. And so for him to be here, take advantage of him. And if he tries to leave early, don't let him. Lock that door, lock that door. Brad has an important training after this, so we're going to let him sneak out. And then we have one of Hoffman's Engineering Hub stars. Christensen is going to be giving you insight on that submittal process. And so we're really loaded with talent today. And then, of course, we're going to go over areas like mitigating risk. That will be a combined discussion, Q&A, and then we'll make sure we get you loaded for our next class. Mel will have something to mention about something that's going on in Oregon as well. And so we'll want to do all that today. We'll have a couple breaks, we'll have some food and all that good stuff. Next slide, please, my brother. Again, I'm keeping this updated. So every time you look, you'll see more pictures. I'm not deleting any images. I thought there was going to be another Hoffman member, but they got involved in another activity. Maybe we can get Isaiah possibly in our last class to complement what you're doing. But look at these people for a moment here. These are those Hoffman players. And that handsome guy in the leather coat, please let's give a warm clap and applause for Andrew Powell, who's joined us. And thank you, Luke, for being here as well.
It's not leather.
Sorry. I just wanted to give Andrew an opportunity to address us all while he's here.
Well, thanks. That's not a leather coat. I don't have a leather coat. I was wondering who he was talking about.
It looks like a leather coat.
It's
maybe it is
the cheap.
Anyway, thank you guys again for being here. I know it takes time out of your day, and we're all very busy. And I see we have little ones here. That's awesome. A little early for the internship program, but not much the way some of the people are going through. Looking not much older than that. So thank you for being here. We've got a great program here. As Dan mentioned, we've got probably 75 or 80 years of Hoffman folks just with these three people here. So a lot of knowledge about how our company works and how we do work and how to do work successfully. And then you asked me to talk about our pursuits right now. So this is an infrastructure series, and we have we have several projects in our pipeline under contract right now that we are working on. Luke's working on a treatment plant project for the port right now. That's going to start in about a year or so. But and then these guys are working on a airline project right now at the Port of Seattle. So we're always working on projects that we have in queue, and then we're always selling for the next project. We're looking for that backlog. So we're always in a constant cycle of winning work, doing work, closing out work, winning work. And that just never stops because we're always looking for more work. So right now, at this moment, we have 3 major pursuits that we are pursuing with different owners. And as Brent mentioned in the first class, we're looking for things that we can do to differentiate ourselves. We're chasing projects, but we think we have a better chance to win than just being a contractor in the mix, right? So the biggest one right now is the mouth of Dwamish. That's where Brent is now at the pre-proposal meeting. That's a $1.1 billion wet weather treatment project for King County. The second one is for Sound Transit. It's the OMF South. It's the operations maintenance facility for the Sound Transit light rail stations. That's about an $800 million progressive design build project. And then the other one is out of the Port of Seattle. It's called Chirp. It stands for something I can't remember, but it's about a $400 million project, and it's very similar to the work that Brad and Ryan are doing right now, and Luke, where we're replacing air handling units on the top of the 3 terminals out at the airport and building new penthouses. So those are 3 projects that we feel really strongly about our chances to win, and ideally we win all 3 of them, but 1 or 2 of those would be great too. So we're constantly looking for new work, and we're constantly looking for new partners to do that work with us. The post-IF project that Ryan and Brad are talking about, or Brad might be showing contract today, that is a project that we worked our way into with the port, and Jimmy working on that project with us, and another airport project. And the success that these guys have and Jimmy has on that project helps us to go after this Chirp project. You have to perform once you win those projects and do good work and be successful, and that's how you win the next project. And so these gentlemen are going to talk about how to do that once you win the project, right? Once you've already talked about identifying the project and winning it. These folks are going to talk about how to do it well once you have it. And I want to pick on Jimmy one more time while I'm here and have the mic. Jimmy and I tried to work together for a long time, and we finally got him on Coleman Dock. And that was great. This is a project Ryan and I did a few years ago, still doing it. I said, Jimmy, can you do this? And he said, yes. And it was great. He was doing good work. And then I said, Jimmy, can you also do this? He said, yes. And then I was like, can you also do this? This is over a period of time. And he goes, yes. And I go, can you also do this maybe? He goes, yeah. And then one day I got a phone call on the way home, and he goes, hey, Andrew, I'm really sorry to tell you this, but I can't do what you just asked me to do. And he goes, I don't want this to screw up our relationship. I don't want you to never work, I want to be the guy that you can call to get work. And that was one of the best phone calls I ever got, Jimmy, because if I kept piling on to you and you couldn't do it and couldn't perform and failed, you wouldn't be sitting here, right? And the lesson I want to be is if you're overextended or you can't do something, tell us before it's too late. Don't wait until you're screwed and it's too late, you're out of money, you're out of, we can't mitigate it. If you get on board, speak up when we're asking for too much or you can't do something, let us help us out, right? You're still here, we're still giving you work, we're doing the airport. Great phone call, great example, I use it all the time. So thank you. Thank you guys again for being here.
I just want to, and the reason why is because at the time we're having, you know how we're all looking for new customers, and we had some customers and we had a lot of work going on. And so we had already done a lot of work with going out and meeting with Hoffman. We've already estimated the job. We'd already looked at the schedule. I mean, we'd already put a lot of money. So we had to sit down and go, well, if we pick this job up, it could go well, but it could go really bad for us because it's just being able to find qualified manpower, apprentices that are apprenticeship requirement. And so it was tough to make this decision because you're going, man, I'm going to have to go out and tell Andrew after we're like at the final stage of the job, say, I can't do it. And so it's very hard to make that call. And some of us put ourselves in that situation, or if you've ever been in that situation, you'll understand it. And so then I picked up the phone and go, man, Junior goes, yeah, they're probably not going to like it, Dad. I mean, they already did all the work, and they're planning on us having out there. I said, yeah, no, we just can't do it. And we ended up not doing it. And so but then at the time you got to figure out what, because the job that we were going to do was a $3.2 million job, which was with Microsoft, right? Well, we didn't do that job, but that one fell through. We could have done it, and it kind of saved us, but at the same time, it could have been really bad for us. So it's all about managing your risk. And at the time we managed the risk, we felt, hey, this is what we got to do. We got a bigger job coming up. It fell through. But you also got to look at relationships, right? So if I would have messed up on this job, we probably wouldn't have a relationship. If I would have not taken the other job, because we're negotiating 2 jobs at the same time, it just happened that, they needed help here, this one needed help here, and so we had to make a decision. Okay, well, we've already signed a contract here. We signed a contract here. What do we do here? And it's hard when you start doing that because you're already planning on what your cash flow is going to be, your overhead. And cash flow is probably the biggest challenges we've had, and Hoffman's taking care of us. And so I think it's kind of making those tough calls where they feel embarrassing, and you still got to do them. I mean, I think that's what will make your business successful. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Actually, we did find a contractor for him. And so we it's not like we left them kind of high and dry. So we had a contract. We had the opportunity to work on that job. It was an experience for them, and so, but it's kind of like that's why we find opportunities for ourselves, and we have opportunities within ourselves, and that's what builds really a team concept here. So,
Bad news early. That's what I'm hearing.
This is what this series is about. So you're asking the objective, but remember, we had a first class, then we had the second class, and now we're in the third. So unfortunately, you missed out on some of that, and we're gonna catch you up. But we're not going to take it out on Andrew.
I say questions.
So, any other questions or comments for our very distinguished guest and host? All right, we're going to thank you very much. All right, now I did not know that I was going to have another very important project manager here today, and so he's a little shy. So please welcome John Hamilton, who is a project manager in the Central Kitsap project. Some of you have had contact with John. Some of you need to be in contact with John. But come in here, John, real quick and tell them about you.
Wrong time to walk. So John Hamilton, project manager, Hoffman from Seattle. I was just listening to Central Kitsap. It's a treatment plant over next to Silverdale, Brownsville area. So across the water. Package will come out on Monday. Still trying to figure out NSS on that side. So if you have questions on the packages, what's in it, what the sizes are. There's some big ones in there, some monsters, and then there's also some smaller right-sized ones. And then within it, there's also some opportunities that I think are there. So,
and to Zach's point on the negotiated support services, as well as maybe working with a trade partner, would there be opportunities in import and export if you're a trucker, for instance?
yeah, and that'll be during the bidding, right? I can put names out there like the Pelcos because the yard piping's with it. So it's a $13 million package with the earthworks part of underneath that. In the bidding process, I can hook anybody up with who's looking at it, who's downloading it, who's looking at all the packages, and then post-award, post the bidding period. Also, let folks know right who's the fair and low, and do contacts that way too.
And how big is the project?
I think it's going to be around 130 for the first phase. So it's a long project. Well, it's 45 months to get through it, and then there'll be another phase that'll come out. Phase 2 will be within that 45 months, but it's going to be the operations and maintenance building, which is a one story, probably 50,000 square foot building, more typical of the building trades, right, rather than heavy pipe and equipment.
Great. Any questions for John? All right. Well, thank you, John. So I'm going to remind you before we get started with Brad's presentation, is Andrew just came in here and told you that they were pursuing, what, 2.5 billion with a B? Did you hear that? Is it starting to resonate on that when we talk about opportunities? And so this class is not about just hearing about the opportunities, it's about seizing those opportunities. And unfortunately, Zach, you didn't know, but when we started this class, I talked about who's in this class and why they're in this class. Jimmy, what animal did I describe? Okay? So I don't have any cubs around the table except for these two.
Let's go.
You're here because you're a lion. Now, you know how to hunt, and now you got a couple weapons. And that book is supposed to help fill those gaps. And so I'm glad you asked the question. I wasn't teasing a little bit, but we need that. Because to me, that's what separates Hoffman from other contractors. You guys don't know the story, but I met him, this wonderful, handsome gentleman, because of John. He went into a job site naked, not naked in clothes, but not knowing much information about Hoffman. But he went in there and he had such an impression on John. John made a call to me the same day. Okay, so Hoffman is not just another contractor. Hoffman is the contractor, and that's why you're all here. And we're not here to talk about work. We're here to get the work. We're here to make sure that you got all the tools that you need to get the work. And the relationship that Andrew described with Ahura, DCA is starting to develop those relationships. How many projects have you worked on, Pat?
I think we're on the
Third project with Hoffman. Okay? So that's what we're trying to do. So anyway, let's get to the most important thing. Y'all, tell these guys who you are. And so you're sitting at the head of the table, Kelly. Tell them who you are.
I'm Kelly Jefferson with KCB Trucking. We do street sweeping primarily, but we do dump trucking as well, water trucking, snow plowing, and I'm also with the Washington State Trucking Consortium as well, Vice President.
Go this way, Todd.
I'm Todd Pita. I'm with Magna Services. We do dewatering, we do drilling, we install monitoring wells, we install resource wells. We have some settlement tanks and do pumping applications.
Pat from with diverse contractors. And just real quick, I just wanted to say I do appreciate, like I mentioned first time, that working with everybody, and it's great to see Brad and Ryan here and meet in person, not just on the phone. But I do appreciate you guys' help through matters and working with you guys. So.
Again, my name is Jimmy Mata. I'm the owner of Hoffman Construction. We do metal studs, drywall, acoustical ceilings, and I love a group like this because, you know, for instance, you do garbage cans. Sometimes it's not Hoffman, sometimes it's us having to put garbage dumpsters on the job sites. And plus, we got other jobs everywhere else. Diversify, and Jimmy Jr. was able to talk to Diversify, and we both share in the same kind of work we do. So sometimes in the industry, we have two good guys, and we may not have one goal. Let's share some people, and they're working with the same partner we're working. So I'm really happy to be here. I'm also the president of Northwest Minority Builders Alliance. We meet on a monthly basis. Our meeting will be it's next Thursday. I didn't bring any flyers, so give me your card. I'll make sure you get an email. And I'm also too appreciative of the team. You know, look, when you're part of the family, and this is a financial family, because here it's not about talking about it, it's about doing it. And so, you know, even with Marcus, you know, I remember I was just going through my Apple stores, and that's when I was barely picking up Apple. You went out there, did a good job. You know, I now do all the Apple stores in Western Washington. So that's part of making sure that when you're called, that you know how to do the work. You're not, you know, hemming and hawing, and you understand the practices of what we're going to talk about, the submittals, making sure you know the schedule, because that's the number one thing. The schedule is a big issue, and sometimes with us, we're too embarrassed to ask, and then you screw up my paperwork, then I can't get paid, and then they can't get paid, and then nobody gets paid. So it's very important to make sure that we're paying attention to the submittals and the processes of this work. So thank you.
Giovanni SIO, Reggio Construction, do mostly everything residential, commercial. I have my guy JT who has the water treatment knowledge. And we've been here practicing for 3 years here in Washington. I'm from Florida and ready to get my hands dirty in the state. South Florida. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Good afternoon, my name is James Faison, my company is Faison Construction. I'm a general contractor, I specialize in concrete. My main goal here is to support and grow minority companies and small businesses. I've been working with Hoffman now for about 20 years. Started in the Portland area, I've done half a dozen jobs with Hoffman, and it's all been a good experience. So anything that we can do, I'm also a member of the Northwest Minority Business Alliance. I'm a member of Table 100. I'm a member of everything. And right now, my company is okay, so I'm here to make sure that our people can thrive and get work, because the back office is a big problem with our company. I'm wanting to make sure that we can help, and that's what we're trying to support in the different groups. Thank you.
Christopher Hughes with Hughes Group. I know it says Patrick Hughes up there. That's my father. He's the CEO of the company, of course, founder. We do everything from traffic control, landscape construction, post-construction cleaning, and asphalt and concrete. We started off as a government contracting company, doing the VAs, janitorial, also transit alert. We're in about 13 different states, about 243 employees. We started construction, I want to say about 8 years ago. I went from the government contracting side over, got thrown into construction, so been there ever since. Started off with like striping and seal coating and stuff like that. Moved into bigger projects, working with Walsh, Apsher. Right now we're working on SR20 with PSC. We got Granite and a couple other contracts. So right now we're working about 10 contracts doing traffic control and asphalt. So just want to come work with Hoffman. Haven't worked with them before, so that would be a great experience for us, and graduating into bigger jobs of GC and stuff. So that's what we're looking at.
Ramon Abondo with Adept Mechanical contracting. You'll see a lot of our work. We've been in business for over 30 years, doing business in the Seattle area. We most recently did some work with Hoffman at Overlook Walk. So that was a highly successful. Me and my family actually go out there all the time to enjoy the new area, which is incredible for Seattle. You see a lot of our projects in the Rainier Valley, Columbia City area with multifamily homes. Our owner is really, really passionate about impacting projects. And I think we are thriving in that arena. And we look forward to developing further relationships to kind of sell that project or the projection for the company.
Hi, I am the commercial sales rep for DTV Recycle. We focus on roll-off recycling, fencing, and portable restrooms.
Zach?
Hi, my name is Zach, and we have two companies. One is logistics company for port to warehouse, and the other one is AAS Logistics. Second one is Castaway Dump Service LLC. So we do have working for, this is a new company for dump truck construction site, but we used to work for port logistics. And then I'm a founder of these dump truck companies, and work with Kelly also to do a bit of non-profit organization of Washington tracking on Chirp. So we are the way of process of structure of the organization, work as a group of different dump trackers.
My name is David Benson. I'm the owner of the Benson HVAC company. What I do is perform maintenance and installation for light commercial and residential heat pumps, furnace, air handlers. been in the business since 2017, retired from Boeing. 32 years I retired from Boeing as an HVAC tech, retired from the Air Force, and I was a first sergeant. So I'm continue learning, there's been business learning, meet with people, how to collaborate, make relationships, so that's why I'm here to learn and learn to provide a service that's benefit to everyone. And I'm always in the business of learning, because in this business, HVAC, is continually evolving. And as you all know, we talk about green energy and all that, and saving the planet, and so that's something that I have a passion for.
Thank you. Marcus?
My name is Marcus Kola. I'm the CEO and co-owner of Apex Electrical Group. We are a veteran-owned small business specializing in medium voltage cable splicing, fiber optics cable splicing, excavation and trenching, and we've been pretty active on some of the Northwest's top infrastructure projects, being at the Port of Seattle, WashDOT, on 405, and we've actually worked with Hoffman on the IF realignment project, as well as the fire station. After 2 active combat tours, when I came back, I had a vision of being able to have the same type of camaraderie that I had when I was in the military by being around people who are of quality, doing quality work, and not just by myself. We actively engage with larger businesses to support, whether it's through electrical or civil projects, and some of the work that we've done in addition to WashDOT and Sound Transit and Port of Seattle is on the government side for WashDOT, or excuse me, for USAID and Department of Defense, as well as naval facilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, when you do such a great job, it tells me that you were prepared. It tells me that you've been reading the Texas. You gave a commercial. Kelly gave a great commercial. Ramon gave a great commercial. I'm going to give those 3 some special notoriety because I really like their commercial. Chris, not bad, not bad. I'm going to introduce Mason and Jeff at the break. Brad has to get out of here. So JT and Lynn, and then we're going to get started with the presentation. But Mason and Jeff are very talented individuals, and I want you to be able to hear from them, but I don't want it to be rushed. So JT and then Lynn.
Hey y'all, my name is Jonathan Jones Thomas. Everybody calls me JT. I'm the owner of FTE Environmental, Water and Wastewater Treatment, Commissioning. Read a lot of books when I was in prison, got some certifications through the Washington State Department of Ecology and Health, and been treading water ever since, wastewater.
My name is Lynn Simpson. My company is Liquidated Builders. We're general contractors. We do commercial and residential work. We've been in business 44 years, and we're glad to be here.
Thank you. Now, our show. Brad Cooper is here to give us some insight on contracts. Bless you. Not only is Brad the project manager for IAF, the realignment that was Marcus was just referring to, he's the project manager on this pursuit that Andrew was just talking about. So great opportunity to be able to learn his style, the Hoffman preferences of how we interact with them. So let's give a warm welcome to Brad Cooper.
Thank you. So you're going to do that? Great, thanks, Dan. Okay, so it's good to see familiar faces, James, Jimmy, and Pat, and good to hear you're working on post-IAF under EC. Sweet. So I'm going to go through basically the process to get a contract direct with Hoffman and how that works. It all starts with an RFP. And before I get into the details, we have a subcontractor questionnaire that hopefully your companies have filled out that gets you copied on any RFP that we have that has scope that you perform. And there's a QR code. I could pass these down both sides. You guys could grab one. I know some of you guys are in the system already. But please make sure you do that, because then you get copied on all the opportunities. You don't have to pay attention to advertisements. You're automatically copied as long as you fill that out and put the CSI numbers for the scope of work that you're interested in. So basically what happens is we publish an RFP for probably 95% of our work. I mean, pretty much on my this is more geared towards my current public project post-IAF, how most of the public projects work. Owners, even on the private side, want to see competitive bidding process, so we're pretty much forced to go down this path on most opportunities. There is the opportunities for some NSS scope, negotiated support services, indirect, that sometimes there's some room for some negotiation as long as the port buys into it or the owner buys into it. But this is going to go over how we procure most of our work and how you get a subcontract with us. So we publish an RFP, and the RFPs, you'll get through it through the link that you get from us through the email once you fill out that QR code information. But it's basically broken down into multiple bid items within the RFP that has, various scope. So it'll be an RFP for a project, and then maybe 15 different bid items within that RFP. Maybe like walls and ceilings, door frames and hardware, electrical, whatever it is. And then you'll look at that and you'll say, okay, this is scope that I could perform, one of these bid items, okay? And then, and there'll also be a proposal form for each bid item that you would fill out in response to the RFP. So obviously as a subcontractor, you'd look at the RFP to make sure that it fits your work and it's gonna work with your backlog. You're not gonna overcommit. You're gonna be able to take on this project. And once you decide to pursue, obviously you got to read the entire RFP to make sure that you got all the requirements attached or included. And then you need to make sure your bid is responsive. On these public works projects, especially GCCM, it's very important. You cannot have any additional clarifications, exclusions, or qualifications. You just have to fill out and that's driven by the state of Washington RCW. So you just have to agree that you've got the entire scope of the bid item captured, fill out the proposal form, follow the directions to a T, include your bid bond, and make sure you get it to us before the bid due date and the time. On my current project, there were a couple bids that showed up 2 minutes late, and the owner was there for the bid opening, and they're like, you can't look at that. So make sure you're paying attention to those deadlines, and you're capturing all the requirements, and you get it to us by that time. On a normal private job, you can provide attachments, qualifications, clarifications, exclusions, and we can go through them and normalize the bids that we get from all the different people to figure out who we need to talk to. But GCCM doesn't allow that. So we open the bids right after that time that the bids are due by. And on this project for post-IAF, it's in front of the owner. There's a link to see it in person or through a Teams meeting in the RFP, so you could watch the bid opening to see where you stand. And then we'll review the bids afterwards to make sure they're responsive. They met all the requirements. They filled out the form properly. They didn't include a bunch of additional clarifications. And then we determine who the apparent low responsive bidder is. And then we reach out and have post-bid meetings with that firm. And the intent of the meeting is to ensure that both parties, the subcontractor and Hoffman, agree that we feel comfortable that you've got the work captured. So there's no surprises down the road. Nobody wants to be in a position where they realize, oh my God, I didn't capture this. I'm going to lose money on this job. So we all want to make sure we're comfortable, before we recommend award to an owner, to make sure that subcontractor has it covered. And if there's a big variation in the bid spread, that there's an explanation for why you were significantly lower than the next guy, because we want to vet that out, right? That's the purpose of these post-bid meetings. So then once we're comfortable, we recommend award to the owner, and on this I had to fill out a form, explain what happened, all the bids, why we maybe didn't award to the low guy because he was maybe non-responsive, and then the port would sign off on that and send it back to me. But then I couldn't issue a subcontract until we got an owner contract in place between Hoffman and the owner. Once we get that contract, then we could issue the subcontracts out the door. So that's, any questions with the process to get from an RFP to, yeah, go ahead.
Do you always only accept the lowest bidder?
We're pretty much for, if it's the low responsive bid and the sub agrees they've got it covered and we vetted it thoroughly and the sub sticks with it, I mean, the port's going to require us to go with the low responsive bidder.
They do, it's a requirement.
Yeah, I mean, but there are, I mean, if they didn't fill out the bid form correctly, if they added some supplemental clarifications, you know, that's grounds for moving on to the next guy.
The key word is responsive.
Yeah.
There's low apparent, and then there's low responsive. And sometimes part of that responsive, depending on the agency, can be tied to their inclusion. Kelly.
What if there's 3 companies that bid and they just say they all bid the same price for some strange reason? How do you go about that?
I don't know. Rochambeau? I've never seen that happen. But yeah, that's an interesting question. What was your answer, Andrew?
I said I don't know.
Yeah.
Rochambeau.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's never happened. The South Park Rochambeau. Right. I'm afraid to comment on anything. So,
Okay.
I don't know. That's never happened. I have to get back to that.
Well, it's just because like truckers should all be somewhere around in the same ballpark, you know.
Yeah, we've seen them very close together. So, you know, if your bid's $220,000 and somebody else is $215,000 and $230,000, that's very normal. But if it's the exact same number, that'd be would be strange. And I would start asking some questions. I don't know how we would do that.
Yeah, the closest I've ever seen is Pat's bid on Post IAF. I think you were within like $2 of the next guy or something like that. And he was the second bidder, but the low bidder was non-responsive. And so we had to go to the next guy, which was Pat. I mean, but I've never seen exact down to the dollar bid. I haven't seen that, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes there are conditions in the owner's requirements that may value other parts of the proposal. But, you know, it's not like it would really depend if it was a ECCM or MCCM or SCCM. You have a little more flexibility on evaluating the gray area and acquiring, you know, actually designating points. But when you're in a low bid situation, it's really, you know, really difficult. I don't know if they would rebid it. I don't know how that would work, but that's a great question, Kelly. I'm gonna look into that.
Okay, next slide, I think, if there's no more questions on this one. Okay, so then once we get that owner contract in place and owner approval to award to you, the subcontractor, then we issue the subcontracts. And this is, I'm going to kind of go through what the format of a Hoffman subcontract looks like. And I just want to say this is an exact copy of what is in the RFP, including some addendums that maybe went out with the RFP. I mean, we're not trying to slip anything in here beyond what was in the RFP, but you still want to review this thing when you get it before you sign it to make sure that you agree to everything. I mean, just in case there was some copy-paste error or something somehow got snuck in there, you don't be tied to it. So review it before you sign it, just so there's no surprises, just in case something like that happened.
And just a heads up, if you're looking at this PowerPoint presentation, you all will have it electronically. The first page, this is the first page of their contract.
Yeah.
So just a FYI. And so these sections that we're going, this is an actual contract. Go ahead.
Yeah. So this was the template for Post IAF, but you can see on the right, first page, like Dan said, we always tie everybody to Division 001, basically the owner's general conditions, general requirements. You're tied to it as like a pass-through to all the requirements that are in those specs. And then number 3, that's basically filled in for the specification sections that were part of the bid item that you bid. So in Jimmy's example, he got the toilet accessory scope on this project, and so that has the toilet accessory spec. And Pat's, he's got door frames and hardware, so he's got the hollow metal spec, he's got the door hardware spec on his. So that pretty much dictates the general scope. And then the first clarification there just summarizes all the bid documents. The RFP, the drawings, the specs, the dates of all that, all the addendums, to like, you know, note that, hey, your contract includes everything in this RFP, but we're not going to spell everything out on this one 9-page contract, right? We're going to pull out the more important things to pay attention to. So everything from there down are general scope clarifications applicable to all bidders that you'll see in the RFP, okay? Until we get to clarification 75 on one of the last pages. That's when we get into the scope specific clarifications for the bid item that you bid. But let's go through this just real quick, some of them. So bonds, this is a public project. It's required that all the subcontractors pull a bond if the scope of work's over, I think, $50,000. So you got to make sure that that's captured in your bid, and you'll put it on your bid form. There's a section to enter your proposal form to enter your bond value. So it's kind of hard to miss that. This prevailing wage project, it's a public project, so you need to make sure you're capturing, prevailing wage on your labor, because that's going to be a requirement. You're going to have to provide certified payroll to prove that you're paying prevailing wage. Enter it in the L&I, get the intent in the affidavits. LCP Tracker, that is a system that your payroll is getting entered into, and by you guys, the subcontractor, and that helps us make sure that we don't see issues that might end up in an L&I audit at the end of the project. So you do have to enter here and then also into L&I, but you can enter it into LCP, and then you could export a file out of LCP and download it to L&I, so it's not really technically double entry. So moving on down, project labor agreement, just real quick on the previous slide. So project labor agreement, this is the first job I've ever been on in 32 years with Hoffman where there's a project labor agreement. But there is one in this project. Basically what that does, it's an agreement signed between the port and all the labor unions that in the event of a strike, they are still going to man the job with union labor. So there's a process that the subcontractors have to go through to get vetted by the PLA and the unions before they could show up on site and do work. So you got to make sure you got that captured in your bid. And non-union contractors can do work on site. There's agreements that the unions will require where, like, for every 3 non-union people that you dispatch out, you need to have a special project agreement to have the hall dispatch 1 union guy to work with your crew. So the whole project labor agreement's in the RFP documents. You could read it and see what the requirements are to make sure you can handle that. It has taken a couple subs by surprise that were non-union.
Real quickly, any of you seen the paper recently about the governor executive order?
Yesterday.
Can you tell us what the executive order said, Jimmy?
So it's just basically PLA will be on all publicly funded jobs for all agencies, but the main ones that it's going to affect is DES and Washington State transportation jobs. So basically what you just heard, this is the first time that we see a PLA. Well, now it's going to be on all jobs. And so I would say for what you want to look at is one of the PLAs is because we're small contractors. So we end up having a carpenter do the drywall, the framing, the painting, the stucco, or whatever happens, the doors. You can't do that within the PLA because each union has their different scopes of work that they represent. So then you have to work with each union on every worker that's working within a particular union. There is, one of the things we're pushing as a Northwest Minority Builders, I'm going to be putting out a letter, is that we want to, if you're going to require these, there's some unfunded mandates and there's some training dollars that need to be set aside for us to be able to learn the processes and procedures. Because what ends up happening is, you mess up on that, it's not like they're going to say, well, we'll just catch you on the next one. You'll be in trouble. You're going to end up having to pay money. So this is going to be a barrier for us as minority small contractors to be able to, excel. In fact, there was just an article in the newspaper today of how in Seattle we're one of the worst states when it comes to economic equality, and so it's boiling down what's happening in the African American community, and so these are issues that's why we're coming together as the Northwest Minority Builders Alliance, because nobody can represent us. I mean, I love the AGC, I'm a member of them, but they have their group that they're representing. So the Northwest Minority Builders Alliance, we're putting a letter together because we met with the governor's office and we said, look, this is a barrier. These are the barriers that we see. And so we were ignored, and so we're saying, okay, well, look, we understand unions, I'm a union contractor, but we're wanting to make sure that there's no more barriers set in place for our businesses not to be able to excel and be successful. So, but this is an issue that we got. If we're going to be working in this environment, working with Hoffman, we're going to have to deal with it on all publicly funded jobs.
Okay.
It might be a good idea for us to do something specific on PLAs, because there's all kind of little tricks of the trade that we can share with you all on understanding some of the workforce and some of the requirements, some of the reporting, how you actually structure your bids that you submit. There's some really key things that we can inform you. If that's going to be the stance that Washington takes like Oregon, then let's prepare you all to do it the right way.
Thank you. And also starting out, so there are also things that you can do like one-time agreements for newer contractors that are starting out. I guess that's in Washington, I know it's harder.
Yeah.
But you can have, go try to get one-time agreements.
Yeah, we're on a project agreement right now.
Yeah.
But the unions, where they have the power, like the port, we want us to do a job for some stucco. That's represented by the Masons union, and they wouldn't sign a project agreement, so I'm not doing the job. So I didn't want to battle that battle because we got new infrastructure, right? But like now, with you all that are representing different trades, we want to make sure that we're helping you out. Because if the union's trying to strong arm you, then we need to have an organization push back on it.
All right, Brad, sorry.
Okay, no problem.
You see, you opened up a can of worms on that.
Yeah, no, that was a good discussion.
Just one more thing on PLA. It's a great idea to have its own training, but the PLA requires a process to get approved. You have to go through a pre-job conference and you have to be assigned by the trade. So it takes at least 2 weeks before you come out on site and do that work. So just know there's a timing up front. There's an upfront timing element. So if you're needed in the middle of October, you can start that paperwork now to get approved and get on site.
Yeah, actually on post-IAF, the ports process is about 5 to 6 weeks. They've got a little cheat sheet that shows all the steps you got to go through in order to be cleared to work on site. So.
And also know if your payroll's on a 2-week schedule, you're going to go to a week schedule. So be prepared for that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So moving on, liquidated damages, delay damages there in green. So in the owner contract that was in the RFP, it talks about if we don't hit substantial completion, it's a $3,000 a day hit. If we don't hit physical completion after that, it's a $2,000 a day hit. So I mean, be aware of liquidated damages, and make sure that you're going to have the team put together to execute the project per the schedule, and also to procure the materials to support that schedule, because you don't want to be on the receiving end of those liquidated damages, right? I mean, if that happens to us, we're going to have to go back and look at the schedule and say, hey, who caused this delay? And we're going to have to talk to that sub, and we don't want to have those discussions. So make sure you're on top of your procurement of your materials and making sure you got adequate labor.
Something on there real quick, just on procuring your material, I would say to get ahead of it because of the tariffs and just the chain of product. Yes, and you look, something that you could have gotten yesterday, or it would take 1 or 2 weeks, it's taking a month, it's taking a week, month and a half. So you got to make sure once you find that out, boom, let your GC know to see what's going on. You'll be in trouble.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Jimmy. All right, moving on. So 13 there. Basically what we did here is owner policies and contract requirements. We went through that division 001, me and the procurement people. And it's like, let's pull these key things out so that it's actually in the subcontract and not just by reference, so that the subs are very aware of it and you can communicate it amongst your teams internally. Give them a copy of the contract so that they know that they're out there. Like the smoking policy, the COVID protocol that they had at the port at the time when we procured this work. You could maybe go to the next page, Dan. The big one, D there, that's the security requirements. All this work is most of the work is on the secure side of the airport. So there's a badging, background check, fingerprints process. It takes a week and a half or so, going there multiple times till you get your badge. And you have to do a test, and you have to pass the test, and if it's kind of a pain. So anyway, it's something you need to make sure you've got the people that are going to be able to get through the process, and that you've got the time covered for the people to get through the process in your bid.
Can I say something else?
Yeah.
The biggest challenge is drug test. So if you think you got your people ready to go, look, even individuals that I didn't think like to smoke pot, and I mean, it caused a lot of havoc for me on that job. It cost me a lot of money. So reiterate, hey, you're going to have 2 drug tests, you're going to have 2 background checks, and some of the individuals haven't done these issues for a long time, but it was just causing them not being able to get in there. And so I would say to make sure that you're, and then sequencing it, because if you wait till the last minute, I'm telling you, the port's not willing to bend the rules, so it'll cost you money.
Yeah, the port is relaxing the PLA drug test, required drug test. But now they're going to require general contractors to have a drug testing program that we need to submit, that they need to buy off on. And that's effective the end of this month. I sent an email out to the subs yesterday. We just got the change order yesterday. But they're going away from their own internal tests. So it's going to go down to 1 test instead of 2 tests. But
Jimmy, Jimmy, on these background checks, are they dealing with issues from, with teenagers and stuff like that, and holding that an issue for the rest of your life?
It wouldn't be the teenage years. I think it's more after you're 18, but it just depends on the situation. Because you would think that there's some things that would go okay, but there's been some background checks that, it's like a DWI or domestic violence is a big one. It's just
That's something your group should do. And in Portland, we got a group that gets together for expungements. We reach out to the small businesses and we bring them in, especially if you're going to go work at the Portland airport. We needed to do some expungements of some small business folks before they even tried, because you got stuff laying out there that, I was innocent of that. Yeah, but you never went back and cleared it off.
Urban League works with that.
Exactly.
If you go to the Urban League will work with you and getting stuff expunged off your record.
And where you can send your employees to go take care of it, that'd be great, because, we just can't deal with it. And they want people of color on the job. Well, we got a lot of issues going on in our community, man.
So how far do they go back with background checks and, like you said, kind of getting the sponge or something like that?
I think it really depends on the offense, but let me look into that for you, Lynn.
Airport's 10.
Yeah.
7 to 10.
7 to 10.
Yeah.
I'll just bank off 10.
Just really briefly, on the last slide, you saw a reference to LGBTQ plus. I want to just give you guys a heads up. Our culture and the environment on our job sites is changing. Obviously, you've seen changes, but they're becoming, I don't want to use a negative term, but there are cases where you may run into an individual that you think is one gender, and they may not necessarily be that gender. They may not consider themselves that gender. And so you can get yourself into a legal battle, or it could be cause for immediate termination. That individual could be an employee of the agency, or it could be an employee of one of the contractors. And so the port actually has some language, and it says it has a comprehensive policy regarding equal opportunities for minority and women business enterprises and affirmative action. Pursuant to such policies, the contractor is required to take specific actions, including providing the port with reports and affidavits in connection with the performance of this contract. And the basic policy of the Port of Seattle to provide equal opportunity to users to the port services and facilities and all contracting services. Specifically, the port will not tolerate discrimination against any persons on the grounds of age, color, national origin, ancestry, ethnicity, religion, disability, Family Medical Leave Act, pregnancy, sex, gender, sexual orientation, whistleblower status, marital status, workers' compensation use, transgender status, political beliefs, or any other protected status as guaranteed by local, state, and federal laws. Port's policies and specific obligations performed by the contractor are set forth in this contract. So they mean business. And so doesn't matter what your background is, what your beliefs are. When you're on a job site, adhere to the norms of these contracts and the policies of the designated customer. I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page. Please.
Also, that goes down to pronouns, because I have a staff member on my team where in the perspective of what you see as a she, but it's not a she, it's a they. So she has to be called up by they. And so that was a big deal with some of our people. I say, hey, I don't care how you feel about it. If that's what they want to be called as they, then that's going to be they. And so those are some issues that you'll have to confront as the industry's changing.
Let me put it, 2 things. God and most parents gave their kids 3 names, so you don't have to refer to genders. Just call them by their freaking name.
Yeah.
Ask them what your name is and call them by their name. You don't have an issue.
Yeah.
Second, everybody's green. Their money. Stop seeing them as colors. Just see them as a product, make some money with some empathy. Go that route, you won't screw up.
100%.
Yep. Thank you, Mel. Appreciate that.
Yep. And that what Dan read there was directly out of that Division 0001. That's referenced by your subcontract that was in the RFP. So the other thing, electronic payroll reporting requirements. So that's the ports version of LCP Tracker. So there's a third thing where you need to enter all your payroll into. So you do LCP Tracker, then you upload a file and you can put it in L&I and you can put it in EPI. So you're not doing triple entry. You could download a file and put it in the other two. It's a little bit painful, but make sure you got the manpower and admin support to make that happen. Next slide. Monthly reporting of payments to all subcontractors. So that's another requirement. Whenever you pay a sub-tier or a supplier, you need to get them added into the ports database that tracks payments to sub-tiers and suppliers and subs. And that is used in the calculation on what percent WIMBY the project's at.
And this was designed to help us.
Yeah.
But when you're a contractor, you also have that responsibility.
Yeah. And then you fill out a new company form. You mark if it's a WIMBY firm that you're hiring and what it is. And then they enter it into the port system. And then you go into the port system and put your monthly amounts paid to all the companies that are under you. So it's another administrative effort there. Work hours, make sure you pay attention to the work hours on this post-IF project. There's a lot of night work on the project because we can't disrupt the airport operations. So that's something you want to make sure you price that in, off-shift premiums. Overtime, that clarification 15 basically says that you've got the overtime required to meet the bid schedule that was in the RFP. So make sure you've got that covered. If we accelerate things further, that would be a change order, but you at least need to man it so that you meet those durations. And then obviously 18 ties you to the bid schedule. Next slide. Apprenticeships. So there's also apprenticeship goals on this project. They're listed right there. 15% of total labor hours have to be by apprentices. 21% of the apprentices has to be by people of color. 12% by female apprentices. And there's a preferred entry apprenticeship goal of at least 1 to 5 apprentices that are graduates from our pre-apprenticeship program. So that's another thing that we need to meet as a project with the subcontractor labor that comes out. And you're reporting this data into the port system to come up with a calculation to make sure we're hitting it. So it's another administrative thing.
You got 2 questions.
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Chris and then Lynn.
I don't have a question, but I got a little tidbit on that one. Taro. So Taro is
Tribal Employment Resource
but they have an apprenticeship program. So if you want to go through them, they always have bodies for that. So
No, that's a pre-apprenticeship program, not a apprenticeship program.
yes, pre-apprenticeship.
So that's another topic that we'll probably have to address. Lynn.
Yeah, if you're out on the port and what's the access to work for productivity? If someone says you can't go into this area because of this, how do you deal with that productivity of that time loss? Can you deal for delays of upkeep when they don't get in there until somebody approves it so we can move in that area?
So is that badging really? Because badging is a little different. So badging and then construction progress is different. So if Hoffman says that you have an area should be available for you and it's not, that's an issue between you and Hoffman. But if you're trying to perform work in an area that your badge doesn't provide that security privilege, then that's a kind of a port issue. And then the contractor would work with you. Hey, we got pipe going through here, so we have to be, we have to be able to have access to here, and that they provide access or privileges based on where your work is and a number of other conditions. Brad?
Yeah, I mean, if you've been told you could work in a certain area and you can't, maybe the port shut us down, then we would ask for a proposal from you for your impacts, and we'd send it to the port. If we screwed up and thought we had it all coordinated for you to work, it'd come out of our contingency probably. And we would just need a proposal from you. We could talk to the port, hey, we told this guy he could show up and do his work and he really can't, it's our fault. So I don't think you're gonna have to eat those costs, you know. So moving on to diverse business participation inclusion plan. This big on this project, the port is huge. They want to make sure they get, on this project, it's a 13% goal on total construction cost. So we have higher goals for the subcontractors because total construction costs includes Hoffman supervision, which gets nothing, and fee Hoffman that gets nothing. So we've got higher goals to make sure we end up at 13% in the end. This is more for the non-MWB primes. If they are the low apparent response bidders, they have goals that they need to hit, you know, to go out and seek firms, like potentially you guys, to do some of their work. And there has been occasions on this project where Dan has helped us, like a non-MWB awardee doesn't have any idea of firms that are available. So I've enlisted Dan on a number of occasions to help identify firms, to get those firms paired up with the prime sub and get a deal broken out between the two so that they're actually doing some of that participation and helping towards the goals.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
So and also what matters of who's backing you up, like Hoffman, they can only do so much, right? Because the contract's between Hoffman and that big prime. But then Dan has been able to come in and say, hey, now to help negotiate some of that, because sometimes my prices of material are going to be more because I'm a smaller contractor than a bigger contractor that buys more material. So I appreciate that with Dan being able to come in and hustle it, you know. And then they know that they're being watched, right? And so they end up working together. Like there's a meeting coming up next week with a particular, you know, sub who's jerked us around on the Swedish hospital. And so everybody gets their day, right? Because if they want us to work with them, you know, we are going to charge them a pretty penny because they played with us. They've made us waste our time, and they've made us estimate jobs, and then they were just talking trash because on the other GC that they're working with doesn't really, you know, make them play ball the way they should be playing ball.
Yeah.
Is these goals mandatory or?
So on the port, so if you read the contract, it says that it's a 13% goal. But then we have to fill out this other form that says we're going to commit to meeting that goal. So we filled that form out because we kind of had to. So we've got to hit the goal.
Hey, Lynn, not only that, you know, remember that work at CPARB over those years?
Yeah.
Part of what they determine is your past performance. They look at the contractor's past performance. And so Hoffman's been focused on past performance since they started. And so that's part of their competitive advantage. And so they don't really look at these as goals because they're looking at another project. And if they're comparing themselves to their competition, they don't want to just say, we're going to meet your goals. We're high jumpers. We want to beat your goals.
And I think that's why it's important with us, you know, because there's a particular contractor now that got a job at the port. Okay, careful what you do on the outside of, you know, when you're trying to jump into a market. We've already heard 4 stories of how they beat up subs, minority subs. And they're working at the port, so we're telling the port, yeah, we want you to keep an eye on this general contractor. We don't think you should be working at the port, period. And so, and that's why, you know, Hoffman's done a good job with making sure that he's working at the port, I'm working at the port, you know, somebody worked at the port, and I think it's the same story, you know. And that really is a cultural, it's a foundational view of the business when you're working at the port as well. So
yeah,
so it's good. We got to keep them at the port.
Yep. Okay, so
one thing when you see at the port is that look at Hoffman is that Hoffman's doing this outside of any agreement. They're doing this on other jobs and outside of any agreement. So you know they're taking an extra step. So don't be afraid to ask the questions about percentages because they're doing it on the outside.
Thank you, James.
Yep. So last thing there, scheduled deliveries. There's a clause in there that says you can't just bring all your materials and then install them as the job progresses. I mean, we have limited laydown space. Make sure you got in enough deliveries to allow, you know, things have to be installed within 72 hours. That's basically the policy. Unless you have a special deal with the superintendent like Ryan. So, next page. Slide. Oh, you're on it. Okay, cool. So meetings, make sure you've got all the meetings captured. There's numerous safety meetings. There's other meetings, scheduled meetings. It's important to make sure you've got time allocated in your bid to cover that. Usually we always have the subcontractors that are core drilling, digging, to do non-destructive testing and locating of what might be in that slab so that they don't go through something like a PT tendon in a concrete slab. It's hard for us to be in the middle of doing that, so make sure you got that covered. If you are doing any coring or drilling. Next slide. Just more general scope clarifications that all the bidders are tied to. We're almost to the end of these. Keep next slide. Okay, now we're getting down to the scope specific clarifications, number 75 there. This basically defines your scope specific to that bid item. Next page. So it always starts off with the first clarification. It says specification sections noted above furnished and installed complete in accordance with the contract documents, including all associated general notes and keynotes. So that basically tells you you've got all those specs at the top of the subcontract as part of your scope, right? Oops, go back. And then obviously you're going to submit all the shop drawings and submittals. And then we'll have some scope specific inclusions that were in the RFP for that bid item. They'll be copied and pasted there. And we'll have exclusions also, like Pat, he's got the hollow metal frame spec as one of his inclusions because he's doing doors, but he's not installing the frames. The framing contractor is. So we've got installation of hollow metal frames excluded from his subcontract because others are doing it. Then we've got the final parts of the contract, the dollars, retainage. It's 5% on this project unless you get a retention bond. And that's paid once the job's fully closed out and signed off by L&I, the Employment Security Department, and Washington Department of Revenue on this project. So it's going to take a while. So make sure you've got that into account. So I think that's about it. Signature at the bottom. So how we execute the subcontract. So once we get that contract from the owner and we got approval to give you a subcontract, we complete it and we send you a welcome email. And it talks about a link to a separate DocuSign email that'll have a copy of the subcontract. So you would sign it on your end through DocuSign. And then it's going to talk about some items that we need returned before we can countersign it to make it fully executed, such as bonds and insurance for this particular project. There might be other things on other projects, like maybe a CSIP project, Contractor Controlled Insurance Program, or OSIP, Owner Controlled Insurance Program. It might be providing proof of enrollment into the program before we'll countersign it. So you got to meet all those requirements in that email. And then you also have a contact list for the Hoffman team with their positions, phone numbers, email addresses. So you can start reaching out to, the superintendent on schedule and the engineer on submittals and, me on cost and billings and office manager on schedule of values to do a billing. So it should help you get you going, and then we'll sign it on our end once we get all that stuff, and then it's executed. Then you're kind of free to do work on site, assuming you've done the drug test and all the other stuff, badging. The next slide, last one. Okay, so this is the typical payment process for the commercial work. We usually have it so subcontractor pay apps based on a schedule of value, bill percent that you provide us a detail for. They're due the 20th of the month, but you could project to work to the end of the month. And then internally we route it for approval. It'll go to the superintendent, Ryan, on my project. He'll look at the percent completes, make sure that they seem in line so that the owner doesn't want to reject it later when they see it. And then they come to me to make sure the coding's right and make sure it looks complete. And then I sign it. And then the office manager will enter it into our accounting system by the end of the month and post it. And then the billing gets ran the first, second, third of the month. And then we compile all that, all the backup, all the subcontractor billings. I do the cover sheet for the owner schedule of values and do some signing and notarizing, and then I send it to the owner. And then what happens is, you're bound by the terms of the owner contract for their payment. On this, the port is 30 days. And they've been meeting that. They've been pretty good about payment. And once we're paid by the owner, we pay you. That's our standard process there. So any questions on that? I think this is my last slide.
That's it.
Okay. Any other questions on subcontracting?
As far as payment is concerned, when it's value based on projects, how often does Hoffman pay their subcontractors prior to getting paid from the owner?
You want to take that one, Andrew?
never unless by special request. So that. So our policy is pay when paid. But as Brad just mentioned, your billing is due us on the 20th. It can take us 2 weeks to do our process and compile it, give it to the owner. That's when the 30 days starts. So you're really 2 weeks plus 30 days by the time the board owes us money. That doesn't always work for folks. You mentioned 2 weeks payroll, now 1 week payroll. Payroll is important, we get it. So if you are having issues and we've worked with other partners before, let us know and we can see what we can do to work with you to get paid sooner.
Yeah, it's a case by case kind of deal. Lynn?
You were talking about laydown area that you don't have a whole lot of laydown area. So if you go to a big project and there's 500 toilets and somebody orders, you're not going to be able to put them on site. So how will we know that we can only have access to put 100 toilets in at a time and buy our toilets like that and schedule it like that? Because if you buy these toilets and they ship them, you're going to have to pay storage.
Yeah.
How do you
Well, so in order, if it's going to affect your price, obviously, because of the storage cost. So if I were you during the RFP process, I would submit a question in the RFPs. You know, if you've got any questions that come to the PM, then I would work with the superintendent, and we would come up with an answer. You know, but we're going to take a break. So I would do it for that type of thing because it's money involved. But usually I don't get those types of questions, and you know, a deal's kind of worked out with the superintendent. I mean, he's got some space for certain subs depending on how much space we have, but I would have to get the input from him because he's the one in charge of the site and the logistics and the laydown space.
All right. First of all, let's give a thankful. Most of you are running businesses, small, closely held businesses, and I can tell you that as a small business owner myself, we have a lot of moving pieces. And on Hoffman projects, I can tell you what they value is lean. And when I mean lean, who's ass am I whooping? It was me. Oh, shit. I'm gonna need some help. Hey, Ryan.
I'm about ready to call Ryan.
So nevertheless, there's Hoffman really appreciates having a lean organization. When I mean a lean organization is they don't want to have to talk to many different people in your organization. When Ryan's trying to run a project, he wants to know who is that one person that I can count on. If there's a problem, who is that one person that's going to help resolve that problem? And on the project, there's a lot of pieces. You got materials, you got equipment, and you got individuals. And if you're not, if you don't have a real good logistics and coordination plan, if like James mentioned earlier, if your back office isn't tight, isn't streamlined, then you can have challenges. So I want to give you guys 30 seconds to introduce lean revisions and what you do, and how that applies to contractors and projects.
Sure.
Okay, you only got 30 seconds.
All right.
Talk about lean.
All right, Jeff Graham from Lean Revisions, everyone. I was sitting here, and thank you. I was sitting here taking notes just to do what you said. Because everything on that RFP that Brad just walked you through, there's a lot of challenges. There's challenges with the low bid. That's why I asked them, does a low bidder win? Yes. Well, if your company has high operating costs, overhead, holding costs, etc., you're not going to be the lowest bidder. You're not going to get that job. What we do in Lean Construction, we look at how you operate. We identify areas of opportunity where you can reduce your operating costs, be more efficient, upskill your workforce, and win these bids. And so we come in there and look at your business holistically and find those opportunities to help you grow, retain your money, retain your resources, build your brand, build your reputation, and work over and over with these organizations and others. And that's what we're all about.
Shortly, it's just about efficiency and elimination of waste, right? You want to get waste out of your business and be efficient. And if you can't tell, he's like the samurai and I'm the sword. So this is how we do this thing. He's the master of all this. I'm the one who's going to be working with you guys in the field on a lot of these projects. So, yeah.
All right.
Thank you very much, and I encourage you all to get to know Mason and Jeff. They're definitely great assets. All right, now back to the show. We're going to talk about scheduling, and we have our superstar Ryan Perselli, who's going to take us through the process. Let's give him a warm applause.
All right, my name's Ryan Perselli. I have been in construction now for 28 years. I started right out of high school. I was 18 years old, started as a laborer with Local 121. Basically, they handed me a shovel and I started shoveling dirt. And then I got a promotion, I got to shovel rock. And then I got another promotion and I got to shovel asphalt. And then I became an operator grade checker and then an operator heavy civil background. And then I ended up on a project underneath the San Francisco Zoo. And we were putting in a new expansion of their zoo. This was back in 2003. And when we put that expansion in, I had, there were some tie-ins that were being done. And I was down in a manhole with some guys and we were doing a drop inlet. And the contractor that I worked with didn't believe in lockout, tagout. And there were some other inlets coming into this manhole structure, and they started washing out some of the enclosures, and I got the washout from the animal enclosures on top of me and two other guys in the manhole. Wow. And so at that moment I climbed out of the manhole and I went and got in my truck and I decided I'm going back to school. So I went back, put myself through college, and came to work for Hoffman, and that was in 2011 that I came to work for Hoffman. So I've been with Hoffman for 15 years now. So Hoffman's the best thing that ever happened to me was coming here. And since I've worked at Hoffman, I've been running my own schedules. And that has started since day 2 of working at Hoffman. So I want to talk to you about schedules from the top down and kind of show you what we're looking at on the front end and then how that kind of trickles down to all the subcontractors and the sub-tiers. So I think to start, could you change the slide down to, I think, Brad's 3rd slide or so, or 2nd slide? I want to use one of Brad's slides first. Go down. The one where he was showing the contract, and it had, I think, number 18.
It's probably up, wrong direction.
Oh, sorry, up, yeah. Go back up. Yeah, so in your subcontract,
Number 18?
Yeah, go to 18. There'll be a couple things about schedule. And so there's that one highlighted right there. That talks about how you're going to follow the schedule that's in the RFP. Now, when we go after a project as a general contractor, we put together a schedule that meets the owner requirements in their RFP to us. And then we pass down those same milestones into our schedule with our subcontractors. That way we're all looking at the same framework of a schedule. And the framework is milestones. It might just be project start and project completion. It might have some interim milestones along the way, maybe like a TCO for a specific phase. It might be very, very complex. It might have 6 or 7 different phases that are all tied together. But we have to hit all those milestones. And then in your contract, it'll spell out whether or not it's liquidated damages based on substantial completion, or if there's an interim milestone that needs to be met, and that might have liquidated damages or some other penalties associated with it. So that's kind of big picture. Once we get a subcontractor under contract, we then work with the subcontractors to do what we call last planner. And so that's section 19 there. Last planner is when I get the actual subcontractors that are going to be running the work into my office, and we look at the framework of the project schedule and we figure out what's best for you as a subcontractor. So we will then take, let's say we have 20 days in a schedule, we have a calendar month to do a specific line of work, and it might start with, it might be a room that we have to build and we've got 20 days. We will break that room up into little sections and talk to all the foremen running the work and say, hey, what works best for you guys? And then we take that information and we put it back into the project schedule and make sure that it meets the project milestones. And then that's how we establish an actual construction schedule. So there's 2 steps to it. There's step 1, which is with the owner and the owner's milestones. And then step 2 is where we pull all the subcontractors in and we figure out what works best for you guys. And then once we get that established, that will establish our project schedule. So now can you go to my slides? Okay, so number one, critical path method. So your CPM schedule, that's always the longest path. If you've never been in scheduling classes before, basically you take the longest durations that are linked together, and whatever that pathway is through your schedule, whatever that longest duration is, that ends up being your CPM or your critical path. And it's oftentimes, you might not be on the critical path, you might be on a different path, but it's very easy for you to get on the critical path if your work doesn't get completed. Door handles and hardware can become on the critical path very easily if you just don't put them on. Eventually they'll end up on the critical path. But we often find the critical path, that's also what's tied to our contracts. Next is developing realistic timelines that meet the schedule in the RFP. I think I'm missing a graphic. Is this the same version, the final version?
I think so, is it?
No, I think we're missing a schedule on the right. I had it divided up into two, but it's fine. We can talk about it.
This is the one you sent this morning. I think this is
Yeah.
Brad.
The one I opened this morning has the right one on it.
Yeah.
So it's still.
This is the one before.
Okay. It's fine.
I can.
If you can open the other one, it'd be great, but I don't want to completely stop the whole thing.
Please.
Okay, so anyway, next thing is just developing realistic timelines in the project schedule. The most important thing you can do as a subcontractor is understanding your durations for your work. Whether it's hours, weeks, days, whatever it is, understanding how long it's going to take you to do your scope of work. That is very, very important for us as a general contractor, because when we do those pull planning sessions, we can link all of those durations together and figure out who needs to move and who needs to be in there first. So that's the most important thing when it comes to scheduling. Did you have a question?
I just want to comment on that. So related to what Jeff and I do, everything he said is so vital. When I work with you all in the field, usually the first thing I'm doing is communication and time studies. I was telling someone at break, Jeff will be in the room with the CEOs and the executives, and I'll be out in the field giving them live data. So if the CEO goes, well, I know how my operation runs, and I'm going, no, you don't. You're saying this and this. Look at all these issues. Look at this extra rebar here, trades on top of trades. You have, logistics trucks going this way and that way. It's so vital to understand your timing and your sequencing, because just time job type of work is what you need. Don't have all your materials on site. Sifting through things takes you weeks to sift through everything. Have your job staged properly and understand the sequencing so things can go smooth. Because if they show up at a job site, there's extra material everywhere, they're coming for y'all. They don't want to pay for that. I know how that works. I've had to come for y'all sometimes.
Yeah, so let's talk just briefly about material management. So at the port, let me back up a step. So before the port job, I worked at Coleman Dock. We did the rebuild of Coleman Dock downtown. We had about 5 acres there. Now we had to share it with all the cars that had the commuting public, but we did have considerable more room down at Coleman Dock. We had a staging area that we were allocated, and we were allowed to divide up that staging area into spots. And then I worked with every subcontractor, and we allocated a certain amount of square footage and said, this is your area, this is your area, this is your area. And everybody had their own little area. And sometimes I had to make an area bigger or smaller depending on the scope of work, but we could manage it by area. Worked very, very well. That was Coleman Dock. Moved to the port. The port, the SeaTac specifically, is full of airplanes. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but there is no space. So everything we do has to fit inside the footprint of our little project. And our project right now with airline realignment is a bunch of little rooms all over the place. So it's not a central location. So what we have at SeaTac is the logistics yard, which is about 3/4 of a mile south of SeaTac. And in the logistics yard, that's where our laydown area is. So every day we have people in work trucks loading their material into a truck, and then they drive it into where the airplanes are, and then we unload it. Now it might be a 20-foot flatbed, it might be a pickup truck. It just depends on how much material you got to bring in. But every job isn't created equally. And so when you're thinking about material management, you're thinking about material deliveries, that kind of stuff, you really got to think it through, and you got to make sure you have a good plan for it. Tracking. I want to talk about tracking work progress. So once we get the schedule established, and that's the one I was looking at right there. So on the top, that's an example of the critical path method, the CPM method. On the bottom is closer to these bottom 3 bullet points. So tracking work progress. I track work on the progress on a weekly basis. Every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m., I have a weekly schedule meeting. And every subcontractor is invited to it. I think I've got 100 people on this meeting. Possible. They don't all call in all the time, but average probably 30, 40 people, different subcontractors, foremen. They call in, some of them listen and don't ever talk. Some of them have to talk continuously because they always have work going on. But they're there to update the schedule. So every Tuesday morning we update the schedule, we actualize it. Another thing we do is we identify any impacts in the schedule. So I don't know if you can see the one on the bottom right. There's about 1, 2, 3, 4. There's about 7 activities there in a row that all have RFI names and numbers after them. So anytime there's a change, whether it's the owner change or it's a change that has to do with the design or the drawings, we just add it right into the line of the schedule where it says RFI 695, and then that is that line item. And so we're able to actually track changes to the project in the schedule in real time. We actualize it every single week, and then that's on Tuesday morning. And then on Wednesday morning, we meet with the owner, and when we meet with the owner, we show them the schedule, and we say, hey, listen, these are the impacts. And we're completely transparent with it so that they all understand what's going on. So that's changes in how we track changes. Now, there's other language in our subcontracts that talk about notifications. If you know of an impact in our schedule, you only have a certain number of days, and I can't remember what it is. It might be 5 days or 3 days or something. But as soon as you know that there's an impact, you have to notify us. Now, I, as the superintendent, am not going to get upset by being notified that we have a delay or an impact. I want that information. That way I can take that information and I can send it to the owner and I can say, listen, this is what's going on the project. Let's figure out a solution for it. So please, if you're ever working for me, just send me delay notices. Let me know that the project's being impacted. I really need to know that information so that we can figure out how to solve it. General contractor, coordination with subcontractors, poll planning, I think I covered that one, and then schedule modifications for delays, and then change orders. So that's the other thing is once we have a delay in the schedule, we then have to quantify it and package it up into a change order, and then we have to send it off to the appropriate parties and make sure everybody's on the same page. And the owners always want to participate in the delays too. They want to know what it is, they want to know how to mitigate it, they want to know what the cost is, all those things. What were we going to say, Dan?
Well, Mason, did you?
Yeah, I was saying, doesn't that work in the benefit of the other way too? If you're ahead of schedule, like letting you guys know, like so other trades.
Yep.
So
Yeah, that's not. Yep. And that's the thing. If we are done with something ahead of time and we're not actualizing the schedule and bringing people in, then it's an opportunity lost because there's a hole in our schedule and nobody's working in that window. So and lately it seems like the project slides to the right more than the left, but sometimes it'll go to the left, and when it does, we can all move forward to the left together. And sometimes we'll also have a subcontractor that was planning on mobilizing on a certain date, and we can't fill the hole. Just like, let's say that they ordered some parts and those parts weren't planned on being there until a certain time. Somebody finishes early, then there's a hole in the schedule, but we can't do anything about it. That happens too. It's not the end of the world. It just happens.
Ramon, you have some personal experience as it relates to sequencing and how traditional sequencing versus non-traditional sequencing can impact your work. Can you give us a little description of how, if a project is not coordinated or sequenced or scheduled properly, how predecessors and successor relationships can impact your profitability?
Yeah, I think our profitability and efficiency is affected in a dramatic way if sequencing and or an ineffective schedule is put together. We're working on a project right now that I can quantify a 30% decrease in production, which is dollar for dollar. That's a lot of money that we're pushing back as an impact, but it's going to be an uphill battle to fight. It could have been resolved on the front side with an effective schedule and CPM.
Yeah, and that's why we do these poll planning sessions, is to get contractor input into the schedule. It helps flush those things out. One thing that I am noticing more in the last 10 years in the industry is some of our details in the drawings are getting more complex. Instead of having a sequence that maybe is only a 2 trade or a 3 trade detail, now we're seeing 5, 6, 7 trade details where we have to send people in 3 or 4 times to get maybe flashing or waterproofing or something like that over the top of each other. So with the complexity of construction, it's definitely making more of a need for that communication and making sure that we're streamlined with our sequence.
And what about clash detection? Is that also incorporated into what you're referring to?
Yeah, so the clash detection, we go through building information modeling, BIM, with all of our MEP systems. That stuff is kind of its own animal. What I was talking about was just the design detail drawings. But that's another good point, is we have a cycle that goes through with BIM where we go in and we take the design drawings and create a BIM model for it that models all of the MEP utilities. And then we're able to identify where those utilities clash with each other or conflict, and then we're able to resolve those. So there's a little bit of a sequence we have to do there. But yes, sometimes we'll find out that maybe the sprinkler guy isn't necessarily the high guy in a room. Traditionally, we put sprinklers in high first, and then we'll put ductwork in, and then MEP kind of around it, yeah. But sometimes we'll find out that, hey, maybe the sprinkler guy has to go in second or something like that. So there is a little bit of sequencing there with the BIM.
Thank you. And then also, Marcus, your experience in that area, have you had any awakenings or impacts as it relates to your business during that process? Has there been any winners or losers?
Absolutely, especially with long lead items and especially when it comes to switchgear or any type of electrical components being sometimes 52 weeks out. We try to get ahead of the schedule by letting you guys know, hey, this is a long lead item. Give you guys that information so that way you guys can build that into your schedules.
Yeah, and so with switchgear in particular, there's a variety of switchgear that might only be 26 weeks out. And then there's a switchgear variety when they put in some special parts and widgets that might get 52 weeks out. And that's great to have that information on the front end so that we can put that all into the schedule. At the very top of every one of our schedules, we'll have a section for procurement. And that procurement area is where we put anything that's longer than 2 or 3 weeks. So it could be anything from electrical equipment to HVAC to, even doors and frames for openings, yeah. That's all super important to make sure it's in the schedule and linked correctly. That way we know the sequence. Okay, next slide. Okay, so communication, I talked about being transparent and showing people what you're anticipating and tracking actual durations. This is super important to me. This is craft worker hours. So on this chart, this is actually our CTAC project that we're doing right now. And the planned hours are the nice kind of smooth mountain that you see there that's kind of an orange line. And then you see another similar orange line, should probably be a different color. But you see how it goes up and peaks way higher. That's the actual head count on the project. And so you can see in the beginning where we started out a little bit below anticipated, and then we quickly had to recover and we went over. And then we just at 50, that's where we just about got it right. And then that last peak that goes up is when the airline came to the airport and said, hey, we want it faster. And so then we had to dump a whole bunch more people on it. We brought a night shift on, and we started adding more and more people to get the project delivered to the owner a little bit faster. But what I would do as a subcontractor to Hoffman is I would create your own headcount chart, just like this, and give that to the general contractor and say, listen, this is my headcount, my planned headcount, my planned work hours for the project. And then bring that to the pool planning meeting and we can talk about it. We can talk about durations, we can talk about hours, we can talk about how many people you think you're going to staff the project with, because that all feeds into the schedule. It tells us what you're anticipating doing, and then if things change throughout the course of the project, we have something to look back on and we can say, oh, that's what you were going to do and you obviously did something different. Now how can we quantify that change and get you guys paid? So it's all really, really good information. Lean construction principles, I think we talked about that a little bit. Effective resource management. So managing the work, craft power curves is this thing, and material management. I think we covered all that. Do you guys have any questions about any of those things before I change to a new slide?
That's a powerful graphic. I think most of us, when we bid a job, we're not really thinking about what the actual is compared to what we planned on or what we projected. But when you get those boots on the ground, and as Ramon has identified in sequencing, if things aren't sequencing right, he may have to increase the size of his crew. And in the project he's talking about, he actually doubled the size of his crew. And so if you look at that, that trajectory that Ryan alluded to with the client, you know, hey, they want to get in there sooner, you're going to have to put those resources in there. And so there's a cost to you. And so you need to be conscious of those milestone shifts, how they impact your profitability, because if it's going to impact your profitability, you need to notify your upline, whether it's a sub or a general, in this case Hoffman. You want to be transparent on the impact, because if you don't say nothing, guess what's going to happen at the end of the job? You're going to be crying that gap that you could have maybe filled didn't get filled, and so you want to make sure you're on the same page. Go ahead.
I just have a quick one. So when it says lean construction principles, are you guys doing like daily check-ins and kind of like your lean principles, or more like a weekly, monthly kind of?
Yeah, I would say more weekly than daily. Right now, we have one particular package that we're trying to deliver where we actually have it broken down on a room-by-room basis.
Okay, yeah.
So it is very specific with that particular area. That is largely driven to the acceleration effort that we're involved in, because we really know we need to focus there.
Yeah.
I'd say the other lean construction practices are a longer duration, more weekly or monthly, as we're in areas that are not as critical. Because like anything, we only have so many resources to focus in on.
So are you rolling these lean construction principles out to your subs and requiring them for lean certified?
Yep. Yeah. Well, not specifically the certification, but yes, the knowledgeable and So like one of the easiest lean principles that we have is electricians and prefabbing all of their assemblies in a shop offsite, and then they bring that stuff to the job site, and they're not unboxing fixtures and all that kind of stuff on the job site. That's all done offsite, and they're ready to install when they arrive. Those kinds of things.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Awesome.
Okay, and then the last slide. Oh, yeah, go to the next slide. I think this is the last one. Training and workforce development. Super important to have people trained. There are training opportunities, I think, out there. If you do need help or you need something, we could definitely point people in the right direction. We talked about BIM a little bit. Well, project management software. We're using Procore right now for all of our project management software. So everybody, I think if you worked with us or for us, you should be familiar with that.
How many of you are familiar with Procore? Good. If you're not, I think it would behoove you, jump on YouTube or whatever you can. If you need any special insight on the technology, reach out to me and I'll see if I can send some educational resources to you. But it's a great, I will say it's a good system to keep track of the various components on your project. There's a lot of moving pieces on your project. So having your RFIs, having your change orders, having your observation reports, all that in one place really simplifies things.
Okay, and then the last one is continuous improvement strategies. We are always trying to improve no matter what it is. Any process that we've got, I've constantly got people on the job site trying to come up with new inventive ways to do construction to make it quicker, faster, easier. I had a guy the other day suggest that we just bring dump trucks into the job site and just park them right there instead of having dumpsters. That way it's already on wheels. So something like that was a thought, and we're evaluating it to see if it'll work, that kind of stuff.
Well, that's the last. Oh, Lynn.
Yeah, I had a question with you. as far as change orders and modifications and delays. Typically, a change order has to get funded. You gotta go to the owner, you gotta find out what it costs is, they gotta approve it. That delays it. Small contractors like myself, we can't wait because we got payroll on Friday. Is there you laughing? Is there a system that you're trying to make those owners come up with things so it doesn't affect them?
Yeah, this is a killer, like an absolute killer for small businesses, because especially projects where we have a lot of change, right, Luke? We have a lot of change on a project. We have subcontractors, and this, I'm not even talking about small contractors, sometimes it's big contractors, but they end up coming into a project and working on change work immediately. And they keep working on change work, and they haven't even done anything in their schedule of values that they can bill against. Because they're just constantly working on change work just to get to a point where they can get to their contract work. And so it's an absolute killer. I don't know a way around it with the port to fund anything ahead, because the port is tough.
So in my private work, when change orders come up, my customers have to pay change orders up front in advance, period. Okay, how much it is, because it affected that too much. So I guess the question would be, in your case, if it came up to a change order, would you have us do the work when there's no money to fund the change order?
Yeah, so that's the trouble, is when you're working with Hoffman and the port, is you can't delay the work. So the work has to, by contract, the work has to proceed.
Even if there's no money to pay for it?
Even if, yeah, so then that's why it's important to notify of the change up front, and then we can start the process for approvals. It's tough, I know.
You know, and it's a great question, because what you're doing is you're forced. There's no other word to call it, right? You're forced to perform work that you may not have under contract. And so, you know, that's a really important thing to focus on. And so, number one, what happens when the work isn't how it was supposed to be? When you looked at your contract, what did your contract say? And is this deviated from the conditions of the contract, of the language of the contract? And when that happens, you have a responsibility to notify the contractor immediately. Now, that notification doesn't ensure that you're going to get a dollar for a dollar, but it does insulate you when there is a claim that you were the one who submitted your information, and so you're in a better position if a claim does arise. But unfortunately, this is part of the challenge of our state law, and why I think it's great that we have prompt pay. And prompt pay is great to ensure that we get paid, you know, within a certain amount of time with the contractors. But when it comes to change orders, that's a whole different thing, bless you. Sometimes you may end up doing a change order, it may double the size of your contract. And so now your labor costs are double what you had projected. And so to me, our state law needs some help. And that's why it's important for you to share your feelings about this with organizations like the Northwest Minority Builders Alliance, because they're having meetings with the governor, they're having meetings with these legislators, and they can propose some language that we can use to alter. They've been working on other things, but if we're not sharing this challenge with them, they don't know. And so most of the oxygen in the room has been focused on pay. They don't realize that it's change orders. Change orders is really what can put you out of business. And so thank you, Lynn, for bringing that up. It's a really important thing. Go ahead, Mel.
You can also say no. Just leave it at that. You can say no. If you cannot do the work, don't take the work. If you can't pay for the work, don't take the work. Call this man and say, I appreciate the opportunity. I can't do it. And he'll thank you.
Well, so I used to be a government contractor, and when I signed that contract, they had a clause where I had already signed, they could force me to do the work. So when they come up and say, Lynn, we're gonna do this, it ain't like I can say no. They're gonna turn around and say, you're forced to do it, and if you don't do it, we'll get somebody else to do it, and we'll take it out of your pay. So do you guys have a force clause for change orders?
I don't forget a force clause.
It's in the owner contract.
Depends on the contract. So this one with the airport, yes. And that means, what do? You take that contract, you take that log, you take that email, right? And you document it and you record it. And then you go back and you look at your schedule and what you had planned to do in that certain amount of time. And like you said before, you look at your schedule, you look at your hours and what you were going to do, and you define what that change is, and you get it out there as soon as you can. I put that number and that information out there first. If nothing else, I get my numbers in order on what this change is going to cost, and get your emails going back and forth with the project management team so that you have that chain of reference. Because you are going to play a cover your ass game. And it's just what it's going to be.
But you are saying we can say no to a change order.
Well, what I'm saying is if you can't do the work that they're asking and you don't have the capacity, you need to have the conversation. And they can't force you to do something you can't do. So that's when you go to our team and be like, look, I can't get 5 more guys from the home in order to do this on your schedule. I don't have the bandwidth. And then they will think and talk about what can we do. But the thing is, bring it up, because the change order has to happen, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna have to be you to do it. Let's bring it, make it a team effort. Because that change order will take you out of business. It happen. So just communicate. That's why we have these sessions, so you can build these relationships. Pick up the phone and call. Dude, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, so Mel's right. There's things that Hoffman could do. We can find other people to do that scope of work if it's that big of a burden for you. He's also right. You got to get the change orders in quickly, because when change orders happen, my experience, they happen in multiples. It's not just one change order. There's 10 change orders coming. So you want to be at the head of the line. So get yours in fast and get to the head of the line, because the agencies like the port or WashDOT or whoever, they only have a limited resource of reviewing the change orders. So generally it's just one person in a room. And if that's just one person working 8 hours a day, they can only review so many change orders every day. So you want to get, and they're not getting more people. So get your change orders in quickly. That way you're at the head of the line, especially if you're a small business.
I just want to comment a note to what he just said. What happens is if you see something that's going wrong in the beginning and you do let it slide, that impacts everything else on the job. So what he just said that's important about 10 change orders will come in, because one probably happened first, and he said, let's keep going, let's keep working through, or let's try to change that on the job. And then it ends up affecting the scope, the scale, everything down the line. So right when you see it, say something. Because that's going to really help you guys save money and time and work through the project with it. So.
I got a question. I don't have a lot of experience in this, and this just sounds like some BS. Yes. And I'm trying to figure out, how do you insulate yourself from that? Obviously, change is going to take place. There's going to be something that might affect the job, where you'll have to put a change order in, or the owner will have to put a change, whoever. How do you protect yourself from something like that?
If it's a public project, it's very challenging. I don't have a solution for this particular one. If it's private work, I think there's other things.
The key to all of this is you got to be able to afford the change.
Yeah.
And this is a money man's game. It's not a working man's game. For your skill to do the work, is how can you manage the risk? So in other words, if they turn you got to get 10 more people. Can you afford 10 more people? No, I can't afford 10 more people. Where are you going to get them at? So you have to have the ability to change with it, because like you said, the industry is not going to change for you, and it does put people out of business. Most people go out of business with too much work.
Yep. And we're here, Hoffman's here to help. We're here to help, and we can help insulate you from these issues. I'm also standing in my office, because I fully understand the issue, screaming at the owner about how messed up it is. So I'm sitting there being an advocate for all of you that are doing change work on a project, because I understand better than most the situation that you guys are in. And we'll figure out a way through it when these things happen. But the best things you can do is don't raise your hand if you're going to have an issue performing the work. And if you are going to do the work, let them know early what the cost is. Get the change order in, get the paperwork in early.
My advice is what Mel says, don't do it. All of these classes, what we're going through right now is real stuff, and you just said it. What can insulate you? Nothing can insulate you from it. That's the way this has been going on for the 40 years I've been in. 40 years later, it's still going to be the same way. It's managing risk. Can you afford to have, if something changes, can you afford it? If you have a plan B or plan C. If you don't have it, plan B or C will kick you out of business. So you got to have a plan B and a plan C. And the other thing is, this is not for everybody. Public works is not for everybody. I'm in this room now. I don't do really public works unless I negotiate it. So just between me and you, if I'm working with Hoffman, I'm negotiating a lot of these things away before I sign the line.
And that's a big part of it. There's a lot of conversations that we can have ahead of time.
Absolutely.
But the reason we have, and this was a great little conversation that Dan and I had, is like, do we want to schedule in here, a scheduler? You're like, no, we don't. We want a soup. We want somebody that actually understands what's going on with that schedule for you all to talk to. You're not hearing from someone sitting back guessing. You're sitting from somebody that has to deal with the same crap you have to deal with, because he has to manage all of that same stuff. He's got to get his change orders turned in. He's got to argue and fight with the owners about what they're asking for. And we can't say no, but we do. There's things that we're like, that's not possible, you know. But it's very rare. So when I say no, it's that's why I have that relationship, right? Be able to say, I hear what you're saying. Most change orders might be small, things that you can deal with, things that you can handle. But when they get over your ski tips, and that's what I have to warn all these businesses. Everyone that I've seen go out of business has had a plethora of work. Every one of the businesses I've watched in the last 15 years of the lender has had a crap load of work. They've just taken on more than they can handle.
Yeah, so I think one thing that you can possibly do to help insulate yourself is if they requested you to do that change, get somebody to sign off on it. You need to get that signature on a piece of paper, you know, or email or something. Don't just go do the work.
Yeah.
You know, get send an email or something that they send you an email back, or get somebody to sign a piece of paper saying, hey, approve this change order. At least you have something solid that if you have to fix it for it, and you have to take it to a review or whatever, you have something signed off that you are authorized to do that work. Don't just go through the work.
Yeah, a lot of times when there's changes on the project, you know, the day of that change, that's part of your activity. You're putting your daily report together, and you may need the superintendent to sign this additional work that wasn't covered. Now, we still have another great speaker behind him, so let's show our appreciation to Ryan.
Oh, I'll let you do.
We have Kurt here from the Engineering Hub who's going to take us through the finish line. Woo! All right, so we're going to go through
All right, thank you, everybody. It's really great to be here with you. It really is an honor. I married into a family of entrepreneurs, and I got a sense of what that's like and the risk, and I just want to acknowledge like the courage you guys have to do what you do. I mean, it's no small feat, and we kind of heard that in the last conversation. So with that said, I've been in the construction industry a long time, in the late 90s, actually I'm not going to give my age, before that even. I was a cabinet maker and a finished carpenter. I had a ponytail back in the grunge days of Seattle. Somewhere along the line I got that lost. But I was working with a bunch of guys who were getting older and their backs were going out, and I thought I better try something else here. So I went back to school, got a degree in architecture, and then got hired by Hoffman in '99. So I've been around a long time. I'm from our engineering department. I want to just put this out here. I am now in our engineering hub, which means I help our project engineers. I do trainings. I oversee a lot of projects. I help. I assist on projects. So I've got a lot of experience in that realm, and I want to tell you that when you're interacting with our project engineers, here's a little bit of an admission. You're going to be working with the newer people in our company. So with that said, everything I say here today is if we're interacting with you well. If anything happens, in your situation that doesn't play out like this, you can reach out to me directly. Okay, and like what we were talking about Procore training, we can give you Procore training. We can help you with this. But like raise your hand, reach out. You've got access to me. You know, like our belief is, if you succeed, we succeed. If we succeed, you succeed. I mean, that's just how this works. I've seen that over and over again. So, with this, is this my first slide?
Yes.
Okay, I'll trust you. Okay, so no, this is not my first slide. We got to go back. Oh, wow. Okay, let's start here. This is my first slide. Okay, so we're going to talk about submittals. And submittals is, the history of submittals is like when they started building buildings in Chicago in the early 1900s, you know, people would build stuff and then they'd get into the project and they realize people weren't bringing the right materials out and that kind of thing. And so what they said is the subcontractors and contractors need to show that they understand what the project documents are saying so that we can build the building that's designed and that's expected. So that's sort of the history of it, to confirm the contractors understand what the requirements are. The benefits that it brings is you all bringing your expertise. So if you're obligated to provide shop drawings, you're bringing a higher level of refinement to the design that the architect and the other engineers may have done. You know, if you've got expertise in waterproofing, you refine and upgrade the waterproofing details. Deferred engineering, I kind of listened to the group. I'm not sure. Ahora might be involved with that somewhat if they have some engineering studs. It's basically engineering that the main structural engineer for the project isn't going to do, but it does need to be done somewhere along the project. If you're involved with proprietary systems, you're bringing that that expertise in as well. Okay, and the final thing here I just want to say is, unfortunately, submittals have also turned into a place where you say, okay, this is what we want to provide. You submit it, and then the architect and the owner goes, wait, no, that's not what we had in mind. And that's kind of a problem. Keep that in mind. That can happen. That's a place where, let's say, you know, you want to bring in this carpet tile here, and you submit on it, and then at the last minute the owner goes, no, I don't want green, I want blue. And if you have costs associated with any changes that come out of that process, that's another one where you just document it. Be sure you have a relationship with your project engineer, have a relationship with your project manager, and document that. Get it out there that you're being impacted by something that happened during the submittal process. Okay? All right, next slide, or maybe previous slide, I don't know. Okay, so with submittals, we break it down into 3 types of submittals. So there are submittals where, I'm just going to use carpet as an example. You really shouldn't be ordering the carpet until you get it approved in the submittal, right? So there are 3 kinds of, these are the names we've given them, kinds of submittals. One is action submittals, which are, again, submittals that need to be approved before you can order the material. So that's early on stuff. There are mid-project submittals that take place during the course of the project. You may have to have we include pre-installation meetings if it says in your spec that you have to meet with the owner and the designers before you start the work. You know, you've got all of the material ready to go and you're ready to start work. Sometimes you have to do a meeting just to be sure everybody's in alignment with how it's going to go down and what's needed for that. And then finally field reports, that kind of thing. And then the final is at the end of the project, you may have closeout submittals, which is like operations and maintenance. The owner may say, I need, 200 square feet of this carpet tile for maintenance in the future. That's all handled later in the project. Okay, Dan, can we go to the next slide?
This is it. And then the fog one.
Okay, so when you get on board, we will have, so that previous slide showed the specifications and what was required. When you get on board, we'll have your submittal requirements in Procore like this over here, okay? And again, I want to tell you, if you need help with Procore, please reach out to us in the Engineering Hub and we can help you understand what's required there. So again, your submittals will be in Procore. And there's a few things, our engineers should be having a submittal kickoff meeting with you when you get signed on. So you're coming onto the project, you probably have a meeting with the project manager and the superintendent and the project engineer to go over, like, here's the billing procedure, here's where the toilets are, here, all the sort of ins and outs of the project. You should have a follow-up meeting with the project engineer to understand what your submittal requirements are. And from that, what we'll be asking is a submit by date when you can realistically get your submittals to us, like realistically. The lead time for your material, like how long does it take the carpet to get here, 6 weeks, whatever it is. And then we'll work with you to understand when it's required on site and what the anticipated review times with the designers are. And what these dates give us is, you're going to submit it here, it's required on site here, here's the review time, and as long as your submit by date doesn't get too close to that required on site date, we've got a gap there and that's good. But we'll be able to track if your date starts to happen to slip, if you say our guy can't get us these submittals until 2 weeks later, we understand if that's impacting us or not, or how urgent things are getting. So anyway, all right, nicely done. You went back to go forward. It's good. I probably did this when I emailed it to you.
It's okay.
So anyways, so what I just told you is, there's two things. One is the submittal process is to affirm for the owners and the designers that they're getting the right product. The other is for us and us with you to track the lead times to be sure that we're getting material there on site. But in this meeting, I also just want to say, like, this is starting to talk about mitigating risk. So very early on, we're asking for you to step forward with your expertise. So you're signed on. Do you have any concerns with your scope or your suppliers or your lead times or current industry trends? Somebody talked about tariffs, right? And like, what concerns do you have? Like, just please speak up. Don't be shy. What issues have you had on previous projects with this kind of a scope of work? Like whatever it is. Like, we want to know, because we can work with you if we know about it, right? But if you don't let us know, we won't know about it. Back to submittals. A lot of times the specifications, they have 10 things that are required, and you go, some of this stuff is just ridiculous. Like, I could give you an example. Like they'll say, provide this fire extinguisher cabinet, and you go, and then they want a document saying, please verify that this fire extinguisher cabinet meets the requirements of the specs. And you go, well, that's kind of what we did. Like, so if there's dumb stuff in the specs, let us know, and it's better off that we just kill it. And we tell the architect, we can talk to the architect and say, we're not going to do this because of this, this, and this. Do you agree? And then we've got it documented. Like the conversation we talked about, get it documented. Like, it's so much better. And if anything's foggy, that's when things start to get dangerous. So just like get it documented. I will urge you to beware of substitution requests. So if you need to change a product for some reason, here's an example. If you say, well, there's this other green carpet that's slightly cheaper, and I want to do that, that's sort of on you, right? Like, that's you initiating it. But if you go and say, hey, I'm trying to get this carpet, but it's no longer made, don't do a substitution request. That's not on you. Because the problem with those substitution requests is you are taking on risk So that you shouldn't have to in that situation. That the correct thing for that situation is, let's say this green carpet is no longer made. I have a suggestion. You could do this one, but send it in as an RFI, request for information. Get it documented that way. Don't say, hey, I've got this and I'll sign it off and it's the perfect equivalent, and then in a couple of years when it's peeling up, they say, well, you said it's a perfect equivalent. Don't take on that risk for yourself. There's absolutely no reason to do that. So beware of substitution requests. Trust but verify. Always get things documented. And, I do kind of want to speak to that idea. We talked about change orders and do you have the manpower for a change order or something like. We're all under these contractual obligations, but really how this whole system works is relationships. So communicating, right? Like just call somebody up and say, hey man, there's no way I can get 10 more people on this project. Like, sane people will understand that, right? Like, and everybody wants to succeed. So with that in mind, you can pause. Now that you've raised your hand, we can pause and we can say, okay, well, we could do this or this or this, or we could give it over to this person, or we could man up and handle some of the scope and assist you, or whatever it is. Okay, in the kickoff meeting, communicate to us. Like, again, your expertise. How are you going to get this material on site? Do you have any concerns? Somebody was talking about it earlier. Oh, toilets. Like, I got to buy 150 toilets. Like, what am I supposed to do? Do you have space for me? What can we do? Like, get that, communicate that with us early on during the kickoff meeting or earlier. Always safety concerns, whatever they may be. And then here's another one, like, and this ties into the scheduling that Ryan talked about. Like, what's your interface with other trades or with other people on site, right? Like, if you're doing low voltage electricity, you need certain things in place before that work can go, right? Like you just have other needs. Please communicate that to our superintendents or project managers so that we know. So that we know what we can do for you. All right, I think that's it.
That's it.